Megan Dalla Camina, welcome to the show again.
Again, thank you. These are my favorite conversations.
Yes, so for those listening, we are doing a segment called The Tea with Megan, and we're getting all of the juice on her book, Women Rising, and also getting your input as to questions that you might have, around the way in which we're living our lives, our challenges, and everything in between. So before we get into your set of questions for today, I'll introduce Megan. So she is a mother and an award-winning expert in women's leadership and empowerment with a notable career spanning 2 decades as a corporate executive at IBM, GE, and PwC, and over a decade as a successful entrepreneur. And as the founder and CEO of Women Rising, Megan leverages her vast experience to help women achieve clarity, build confidence, and become authentic leaders. And her latest book, Women Rising, The Forces That Hold Us Back and the Tools to Help Us Rise, has been hailed life-changing and is a #1 bestseller on Amazon. So, Megan, today being episode 4 of our mini series, and we'll pop the details of the previous episode in the show notes as well. We did a shout out to our community around all of the themes in your book and essentially, what some of the challenges that they might be experiencing as well. So, if you're ready, Megan, I'll bring you question 1.
Let's go. Let's go.
Awesome. So the first question that came in was one I hear all of the time. And as you know, I speak to parents on the daily, and this one's really around the mental load. And the question that came in said, look, I'm a working parent who feels like the emotional load of parenting always falls on me, as well as the mental load. And how do I get my partner to sort of take on more of this load? It's such a common question. Any thoughts?
Such a common question. I hear this all of the time as well, from friends and people, women in my community, in the thousands. So it's super common. So I just want to acknowledge that first. Like this is a very real challenge. There's a couple of things. Number one, for you to acknowledge the intensity of the load and that it is an emotional load, it's a physical load, and it's also a mental load. And anything that you can do yourself to start to reduce that will be really helpful. So with mental load, things like getting everything out of your head and into some form of system, I find is just like we do when we run our businesses or our careers, is incredibly helpful for that mental load. And also, like if you can document all of the things, I had a girlfriend who did this that I worked with to do this because she had the same challenge, and then show that and share that with your partner. Like, this is what I'm carrying. This is what I'm managing. This is how many hours it takes me to manage the school calendar and this and all of the rest of it. That can be, number one, both enlightening for the partner, but also a really good tool to say, like, what can you step in and help with? How can you take some of this load? How can we share this more equally so that it's not just me lying in bed at 3 a.m. going through all of the things, that we have some partnership on this. I think in a lot of cases, and I've seen this a lot, the partner doesn't realize, doesn't have an understanding of just how much is being carried with the kids on the home front. And often as women, if we're the ones doing that, we don't know either. Like when we actually get it out of our heads and onto paper or into like a note system, we start to realize why we're so exhausted, why we're so overrun. And it gives us a mechanism to say, okay, like you need to step in here and help out.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm just thinking about from my perspective and what I've heard other parents say. For me personally, I think it's very easy for us to say we just have a lot going on and I just want to be like, where does 50-50 parenting come in? Because that's what we agreed on when I was pregnant. You were going to do 50%, I was going to do 50, and now I'm doing 80 and you're doing 20. Two things. From me, I felt as I had to accept that I was probably going to carry more of the mental load than my partner. And in accepting that, it kind of helped me because I was like, okay,
Yes.
that's just when it's never going to be 50-50. And Leonie, this is just what it is. The second thing I do is when I'm feeling resentment builds, because that's what happens when you're feeling inequality. You get resentful, then you get passive aggressive, and then your relationship suffers and
Yes.
everything in between. I often will write down all the fluff in my head, like, oh, I'm so annoyed because I have to do bloody everything. But then I'm like, no, but what is everything? Let's nut this down further. And then I try to get into solution mode. It's like, oh, actually, if my husband did an extra drop off on the Tuesday morning, that would give me so much more time to breathe.
Yes.
And so then I often will go with that solution and having prepared the conversation in my head rather than just going irrationally and attacking and being reactive to my partner and saying, look, I'm bloody overwhelmed. You do nothing. I do everything, and like help out more. Like that's such a general, wide sweeping statement. And the other
Yes.
person's going to get defensive. I often will go, look, in a calm voice, I've thought about it. I am drowning a little bit with all of my other commitments. Any chance on the Tuesdays we might be able to get in the diary for you to do the pickup? And I'm feeling calm, but it's also not just a one-off. That is then, if we agree, that is then his role on a Tuesday,
Yeah.
and that's his responsibility. And so it's not just that one-off drop-off. So I don't know, little things like that I think personally have helped me in trying to approach what can be a really complex dynamic around the mental load.
Yeah, it is really complex, and I love that you've done that. And what that speaks to is clarity and specificity, right? And it also, something else that we need to do is we need to demystify what's true and what's not true. Because if you're feeling really overwhelmed and overloaded, it's very easy to go into that story of I do everything, you do nothing. And I'm resentful and I'm unhappy and all of that, right? And all of that energy comes in. And so often as women, we don't articulate it, but we feel it. And that's the passive aggressive behavior. That's the resentment, which hurts the relationship, but it hurts us more because we're internalizing all of that in our bodies. So what's true and what's not true? What are the unseen and seen things that they actually do and contribute as your partner that maybe they also feel, well, I do all of these things and, no one ever gives me credit for that. And where do I, like, the thing I love most about what you said is, where do I need support? How do I get absolute clarity on that? And then how do I ask for it? And then make that just part of our normal routine. So clarity, specificity, what's true, what's not true. What are the stories you're telling yourself versus what's actually happening? And then how do you communicate and get that load shared?
Yeah, love it. Another question. I'm a dad and I want to be more involved with my kids, but I feel like my partner doesn't trust my parenting decisions. How can we create more partnership in our parenting? And Megan, I hear this a lot around my partners undermining my parenting. I said it's no TV, and they've gone over my head and said, oh, just let them have half an hour. Like it's this, we grew up differently, so we have different expectations when it comes to parenting.
Yeah.
It can be very complex. Thoughts around this sort of topic?
Yeah. I think one of the first things is, what are your parenting agreements? Right? So what are the agreements? And if you're two parents living in the same house, obviously you can do that. If you are a single parent but co-parenting like I was, you can also do that. Right? What are the agreements that we have? Whether it's how much TV, how much homework, which friends, social media time, whatever it is. Yeah. What are our agreements? Number one. Number two, communication with your partner. Like if you are feeling disrespected or devalued, you have to communicate that and find a way to say, and again, specificity is your friend here, rather than just saying, you disrespect me as a parent, or you override me, or you whatever, you, is to like monitor the situation for 2 weeks and write it down. So on Tuesday, Freddie asked this and I said this and you came over and did this, right? And then go into a conversation, not with judgment, but just with, I don't know if you realize that these things are happening And as a result, I statements, I feel like this. I feel like I'm not valued, and I want to contribute more as a dad and help you and take the load off and be more active. But I feel like when things like this happen. So, and then recraft your agreements with each other. And there's work on the other parent's side to do, but they can only do that if they're aware, if you're having the conversation, and if it's done in the context of love and respect, not blame and shame. So there's some of the steps that I would take. And you can also do that. I did that with my son's father. We had many of those conversations, even though we split up when he was 18 months old. We still had those agreements in place. So yeah, I think that will really help.
I love that. And I love the I feel. That's so critical, because no one can sort of say, well, mate, you don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Like, it's harder to push back on it because it's like, well, that's how I feel.
Yes.
Like, so, versus you
Yes.
didn't, and you
You
know, and
did.
yeah, so
Yes.
much softer, so much softer. So
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely amazing. Okay, I'm going to throw a final question at you. And I think this is very relatable to so many of us as well. So this is a mum who wrote in saying she feels completely overwhelmed with trying to be everything for everyone. How can I start to reclaim my time and energy?
Yes. Oh, well, the last question gets to the heart, I think, of so many of the challenges, right? That I write about in the book that we've talked so much about. So the question that I would ask, and the life vision chapter in the book would be really great around this, is like, what do I want my life to look like, and who do I want to be in that life? And what matters and what doesn't matter? Because often we find ourselves as women trying to be all of the things for all of the people. But when we really look at that, the value that we place on so many of those roles, or so many of those people that we're trying to please, just don't matter to us that much. Or they used to matter, but they don't matter in this season and this stage of our lives, or in this identity that we are currently in. So identifying what does matter, who do I want to be and to whom, and what do I want for myself? And we all know, like, if we've got young kids or if we've got teenagers, that space and what we want for ourselves in this season could be much smaller than it used to be. Or the time available might be much shorter or much more fragmented than it used to be, but we can still build it in. But first, we have to identify it. We have to get clarity around who am I? What do I want it to look like? How do I want to feel? And what would fulfill that for me? And then how do we bring that in? And the boundaries piece that I write about is incredibly important, because once we've done that work, then we can start to look at, okay, here's my boundary. Where do I need it? How do I implement it? How do I hold that line when people start pushing back on that boundary? So there's a few little pieces here to be done. That life vision chapter and also the well-being chapter and the work around boundaries will really help bring that together. And like, go gently with this, but we're trying to claw back, pull back your space, your time, your identity, your energy for the things that you define are the most important, not just what everybody else is defining for you.
Yeah, I love that. Very well said. So, I guess to wrap on this mini series that we've done, in the first episode, we spoke about the forces that hold us back, obviously, the key first theme of your book, the first section. Then we moved on to talking about in our next episode, the stories that keep us unstuck. And so many people had some great, I think, very relatable questions that they brought to the table. Last episode, our episode 3, was the tools that help us rise. And you had so many great nuggets of wisdom there. And obviously throughout the book as well, which, as I said, the book will be in the show notes for everyone listening. And I guess to wrap, Megan, any final words for all of us Aussie parents out there just trying to do our best on the daily.
Oh, look, I mean, number one, I'm just sending all of the parents listening so much love. It is the hardest job in the world. It is the most undervalued job in the world, irrespective of your gender. And I just send so much love and gratitude for the job of raising human beings. And it is the most important job that any of us can ever have, no matter what other roles that you may play. Like, go gently, be kind to yourself, be really clear on who you are and what you want to be and what you want to do and how you want to parent in this season of your life. And acknowledge all of the incredible things that you do every single day to be the parent that you are, to make the contribution that you are making, and make sure that there's something in there every day that's just for you. However small that is in the busyness of everything else, whether it's, a nap in the afternoon, a mini meditation, going for a walk, sitting under a tree, making a cup of tea, savoring your coffee in the morning, whatever it is, make sure there's something in there for you and that you don't lose yourself in the equation of doing this important work.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much again, Megan, for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been amazing. And I want to acknowledge you, Leonie, for everything that you do and all the support that you bring to parents everywhere with this incredible work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Catch you next time.